All right.
James.
All right. So this is a part five on the book of Habakkuk Bible study. So it's not really, we're not really doing it for views or anything, but I'm going to be posting on the regular video section as well because for some reason people are not viewing the live section. I'm not sure why. I guess people see it as being pointless only because it's be on the video section of the channel, but whatever, it'll be done nevertheless. So this is part five on Habakkuk, and if anyone has missed it, like I said earlier, it'll be posted, so you don't have to really worry about anything. Um, but yeah, since this is Mars stuff that she's doing, we're gonna leave it all to her now.
Me. Hey woo. Okay. um. So yeah, going back from where we left off on. Blech. I'm gonna do like I normally do and read what Dana has on this on page 89 is where we're starting back up, and then I'll go from there. So I was kind of hoping Jen was gonna be in here just because this starting off point starts off kind of from a woman's point of view, but also I guess men can imagine it too, but just not in the way that we would. So we're starting off with embedding your questions with truth. Imagine you've been bleeding for 12 years. People smell your heavy menstrual rags before they see you and walk the other way. You are considered untouchable, unclean, and everyone is tired of your need. There's nothing that can be done, but you hear about an unconventional new treatment. It would require you to travel a little and do something that's considered socially unacceptable, but that ridicule could not possibly be as bad as this. Anything you would need would be better than this. So you wait until the man from Nazareth is close, for others to touch you is forbidden, but to touch someone else, unthinkable, insane. But you believe what you heard. This man reaches for the untouchables and makes them clean. The crowd is pressed in against Jesus. You lean low to the ground, past the feet of others, and just barely touch the hem of his robe. You can feel it immediately, right away. The ache abruptly ends. It feels like the swelling is gone, and you sniff the air. You can smell the dust of the ground and the sweat of the crowd, but not your own stench. You are healed. You don't know it yet, but people will follow your example. They'll do just what you've done. They'll sneak up on the crowd and grasp Christ's garment, and they will be made clean too. And part of Matthew 14:36 says, "And those that recognized Jesus implored him that they might only touch the fringe of his garment. As many touched it were made well." Before I go on, am I alone in here?
No, you're not alone.
Okay. I
I
just saw my thing go to the
no,
big screen. And I was like, "What? What just happened?"
no. What happened was I blew you up on the big screen. So since you're the one talking, I'm not talking, so I figured I'd blow you up.
Okay,
Now when we
I
go,
saw that happen. And I was like, "What just happened?"
yeah. So you're good.
Okay, so for today, we will take one more look at Habakkuk 1:12 through 17. Now you've read it so many times, I'm not gonna make you read it again. I'm pretty sure we all had that have been through this with me. We all pretty much understand what 12 through 17 is saying. Basically, I'll just recap for those who haven't heard it. Um, God is pretty much talking to Habakkuk, telling him, "Hey, why are you questioning me? I'm still here." Talks about the Chaldeans and how horrible of a people they were, and how fast and violent their horses were. I also want to go back to that when it talks about the horses and stuff, how violent they were and how mean they were and how fast they were. I just want to think about for a second the amount of training and abuse that those horses must have been through to make them that fast and that violent. That's I still haven't quite grasped my mind around that. But anyways, he talks about the Chaldeans and how nasty of a people they were, and then Habakkuk starts talking to God with a more like praise and uplifting kind of way, like praying again, but more in an uplifting and praying kind of, or uplifting and praising kind of way, instead of just the straight up, "How long will you not hear me?" Da 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 da. So, I get my water. So, for going back over that, she says we're going to need a fine tooth comb to thoroughly search the strands of truth. Um, and for me, she had me draw like a crown above inequalities or truths about God that Habakkuk references, and we're looking for a total of five. Now she names those five, and I'll read off the five first. In verse 12, it talks about God being eternal and self-existent. In verse 13, it talks about God being holy. Verse verses 12 through 17, God is mighty. And in verse 12 again, God is faithful. So those are the five truths about God that Habakkuk references in just 12 through 17. So starting with the God is eternal in verse 12, God exists outside the the confining spaces of time. Moses wrote that in Psalm 90, verse 4, that 1,000 years in God's sight is like a day. And the Apostle Peter actually cautioned his people to not forget how God sees time. So, knowing that God exists not being like restrained by time, how is this significant as you face your own horrible times or devastating times or hard times? For me personally, I said, well, it seems like our times are devastating times. It takes a while, and it takes a while. It's only pretty much a second to God. So, but for the other person in here, how is that piece of information significant to you as you face your own hard times? If you have anything to say at all.
And what way? I'm paying attention, but in what way are you pertaining to, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I mean, the question that she gave was how might this be significant as you face your own devastating circumstances? The fact that God is eternal.
Well, if for me, it means I know God's always going to be right there whenever we need Him in times of need. We need Him every day, basically, not just when we
Mm,
feel like it, but we just need Him in general. Like, not for when we have problems, but if we want to thank Him, or He gives us like a roof over our head or clothes on our back, stuff like that. It helps us realize that we need Him. We're always going to need Him because He always provides for us, basically.
yeah. That can also bring up a example as well. I mean, you already know about this, but other people may not. When I first started going back to church and started like thinking about joining the church, I brought up the fact that, my husband is, always very upset and way, way, way too concerned sometimes about the state of the world. And there's been a few times where he's, had a breakdown moment, which is fine because men have emotions too. Um, just about the state of the world and our situation. And I've always told him it is not just by chance that there is a church that I love, people that I love, and within walking distance, there is a food pantry a half a block away. Like, it's not just by chance, and it's, we still have a roof over our head. We still have a car that we, have. Like, we still have these things. It's okay. You don't have to focus on
And
everything.
you have food for your stomach.
And food for my stomach. That is for the people who are watching, stummy is a word I use for. I accidentally combined stomach and tummy one day, so therefore I just started saying stummy.
I know, and I love that word now.
So there, let me also say this as a pre-warning: there are a lot of hard and not like I'll just say hard and difficult, thought-provoking questions in this chapter. And that's why it took me 45 minutes to get through it because I was sitting there like, huh, like actually like having a hard time like just thinking about it. So there's some very thought provoking questions in here. So moving on. Um, Sometimes it might seem like it's taking a long time for God to answer your questions and solve your problems, but going back to what I just said, um, the way He sees time is different. Like His solution is just is like it just exists because He's already done the work and He's doing stuff now. So as we examine each of these attributes of God, um, I want you to think back on all the diligent studying that we have been doing together as a group and consider why each quality is important to Habakkuk and his nation as they approach being in that Babylonian exile that we were talking about before. So, hard hard question number 1. Why do you think Habakkuk chose to mention God's eternal quality?
Huh.
Yeah.
Uh, hmm.
So, and I had to go back to Habakkuk and kind of sit there and read 12 through 17 multiple times because the questions just keep getting more and more deep and thought provoking, like I said. So, I was just kind of like, I don't know, to show him praise and lift him up.
That's how I feel about it because that's the only thing I could possibly think of.
Yeah. So then the second attribute or quality, wait, what? The second part that I said is God is self-existent, which is also showing in verse 12. Anytime you see the word Lord in all capitals within the scripture, it's a translation of Yahweh and an abbreviation of his name Yahweh. So like when you see it's a translation of like when you see the word Lord in all capitals in the scripture, it is a translation of YHWH, which means Yahweh, sometimes translated as Jehovah. So, how might using this name versus just Lord in all capitals signify yet again that Habakkuk is softening his wrestler's grip, if that makes any sense?
I'm trying to make sense of it, to be honest.
Hold on, let me put it here so that you can see it. Okay.
Let's see. Anytime you see that the word Lord in all capitals within Scripture is a translation of Yahweh, an operation of His
Sorry.
Hebrew,
Shut up.
Hebrew, sorry, Hebrew name Yahweh, sometimes translated as Jehovah. I'm
I was
sorry.
typing without looking.
Hey, you did really good. Go back over here. Hebrew. Now you.
So, do you remember talking about the wrestler versus embracer, right?
I believe so.
The wrestling part was the first chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Then God comes in and talks and says, I will work a work for you in your days, which you will not believe, though it be told you. And then in verse 12, he starts embracing God versus just crying out and lamenting. So he went from wrestling with God, I forget, I don't know what the word I'm trying to, theoretically wrestling with God to embracing God in verse 12. Make sense?
Oh, mm-hmm.
So, how might using the name Yahweh or Lord in all capitals signify that he is softening that wrestling grip?
Something of wrestling grip.
I was like, he realized that God is in control and he's still there, even though God's silent. So, therefore, he was trying to lift him up and praise him versus just, oh Lord, how long shall I cry? And how long will you not hear?
Oh, I think I get something here. In other words, he was basically fine with the flesh. He was trying to reason with himself, but stinking bug. Um, it wasn't doing him any good. And God was trying to say, "Hey, look, this is what's what. This is what I'm trying to get you to understand. But you're going by your own understanding. You're fighting with your flesh.
Right.
That's the reason why it says the soul is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's why there's wrestling thing going on.
Mm-hmm. So, the name Yahweh basically means the self existent. God is, he was, and he always will be. And he used that name to reveal himself to Moses when through the burning bush. And in Exodus 3:14, he literally says, "I am who I am." So then I'm going to read this part also because I thought it was interesting. When the Jewish people were in captivity to Egypt and crying out to him for deliverance, God showed up to announce his self existence. In other words, he is not dependent on anything or anyone in the world. When he is at work, he often invites us to be a part of it out of love. But never imagine for one second that the God of the universe needs you to fulfill his plan. If you go the way of Jonah and never turn back, he will accomplish whatever he desires. So, how is this truth about God helpful for you as you wait on Him for prayers and solutions to your own problems? And why do you think this is another hard question? Why do you think Habakkuk chose to mention God's self existence?
Mainly because he knew he's right there, even though he didn't understand how he worked. He tried to reason with himself, but even though he didn't understand how he worked, he still praised him because he knew who was in full control. Because humans themselves are not in full control.
Right. To the first part of the question, I was just kind of like, I know that my prayers will be answered eventually. And then the second part of the question, I kind of was just like, I don't know if I was thinking too hard about it or what, but I was like, maybe he chose to mention God's self existence to emphasize God's eternality and independence and to kind of challenge the situations that define God. I don't know. I think maybe I was thinking too hard about it, but I don't know. I also, when I was saying that to the first part of the question, I know that my prayers will be answered eventually. I saw a video of this pastor and he was actually talking about the woman that had the bleeding issue for 12 years. And he was like, I know that women are more persistent and more resilient, and God knows that too. And he has a tendency to answer women's prayers because they will not leave him alone. They will keep going to God and keep going to God and keep going to God. And like the situation with the woman and I don't know if he was a governor or something like that. The guy that counted money, where this woman kept coming to him and be like, "Hey, I can't pay off my debts. Hey, I can't pay off my debts. Hey, I can't pay off my debts," until she annoyed him too much to the point where he was like, "Okay, I'll give you the money. Just leave me alone." And the pastor was using this as a joke, but like he said, men will price about something, for a while, but if they don't hear back, they'll just, be like, I guess it's not getting answered. But women will bug and bug and bug God to death until he finally says, "Okay, I will answer your prayer." Maybe not in the way that you want it to be answered, but I will answer it. So for me, I thought about that video. I'd have to probably search it to be able to show it to you, but when I was writing down, I know that my prayers will be answered eventually. I just thought of that because, like, I'm not gonna lie, I do bug God a lot sometimes. Sorry, I kind of got off track.
No, you're fine.
So the next part is God is holy. This is the third attribute of God, the third truth about God. So I also wanted to read this. Um, Generally, we equate holiness with moral goodness, but the quality as it relates to God is much bigger and speaks to His powerful ability to make right everything that is wrong. Kind of like the sun in our solar system is a force of light that penetrates all darkness. An attribute of God's holiness is referenced in verse 13. Um, it says, what words does it use, and how would you define the key word and its interaction with God's holiness? I personally think verse 13 is like the whole verse talking about God's holiness. Like, my version says, thou art of purer eyes than to behold evil, and canst not look on iniquity, wherefore lookest thou upon them that deal treacherously, and holdest thy tongue when the wicked devoureth the man that is more righteous than he. I think it's the whole verse. I don't know what your translation says.
What is that one?
Habakkuk 1, verse 13.
Habakkuk 1, verse 13. Okay, so I'm reading on the NRSV to make it easier for people to understand because I know Old English is hard to read and understand. Your eyes are too pure to behold evil, and you cannot look on wrongdoing. Why do you look on the treacherous and are silent when the wicked swallow those more righteous than they?
So then the question is, um, what words does it use, and how would you define the key word and its interaction with God's holiness? So basically, what words would you think that are defining God's holiness without really saying it?
Um, hmm, how to define that? Hmm,
I think mine is like the beginning of the verse, thou art of purer eyes than to behold evil. Like he can't look upon evil
yeah, he can't look upon evil. That I know for sure.
just because he's that holy.
And that goes back to, um, actually, no, I wouldn't go back to First Corinthians 6:9. It wouldn't. It would fit, but I'm not sure that would apply to that. That's actually a good question. I have no idea how to define that. I mean, I could say the same as like what you said at the beginning. His eyes are too pure to behold evil. But other than that, I have no idea how I could define that.
Yeah, like this chapter is so thought provoking, it's crazy. So another thing that it's a large passage that I'll read it out, not passage, part of the Bible study, um, that I just thought I should say. Purity was no small thing for the Israelites who had rituals to avoid anything unclean or related to death. They could not touch a dead animal, for example. They had lists and lists of things that they could and could not do in order to stay morally clean. If anyone tried to enter the sacred Holy of Holies in God's temple without being both permitted and ritualistically pure, they would die. They actually tied a rope around the priests when they went in there. Key action: do not touch. But the prophet Isaiah turns all that thinking upside down when he receives a revelation from God. Like Habakkuk, his writing recognizes Jewish exile but has a longer lens to foretell the coming of Jesus Christ, who will change everything, including how we become holy. To help Isaiah understand, God gives him a vision of coming into his throne room. Isaiah declares, woe is me, I am unclean. He's pretty sure he's good as dead. Then something new happens. God holds a coal and touches it to the prophet's lips. Instead of dying, he becomes clean. This is symbolic of what Jesus will do when he touches individuals with leprosy, the woman with the issue of blood, a very recently dead Lazarus, and others he heals during his time on earth, all unclean by Jewish ritual. But Jesus touches them, and it makes them clean. That's what his life and death would do for us too. Key action: do touch. When it comes to evil in this world, holiness matters. Why? Because everything, every circumstance, place, and person is made right by his presence. This means your addiction, pain, failures, and sadness do not get to have the last day. A genocide, holocaust, exile, or nuclear bomb do not get to infuse the rest of the world with evil. The amazing work God does when He touches them will reframe the way we see and experience everything. Unbelievably, He will make them useful and good for us. So, how does that make you feel about your problems or the evil and suffering you see in this world? Obviously, good. Um, why do you think Habakkuk mentions God's holiness as he presents his questions? I said because of the evil he saw in his world at the time.
That would that's actually a good answer
Yeah.
because I never looked into Habakkuk, so that's actually kind of new to me. It's making me think a lot.
Yeah, I'd never even, I don't think, I think maybe the last time I read Habakkuk was when I was in Bible school. Like, not vacation Bible school, but like where I was homeschooled, we had the first subject of the day that we started off with, subject, was Bible, was a Bible class. And it was either like a little book that had basically kidified the Bible, or when I got older, I had like actual Bible studies that I would do, not like this, but like little mini books. And I think the last time I read through Habakkuk was the kidified version. Moving on, God is mighty, and you can see that in verses 12 through 17. The word mighty is sometimes used to define the word rock. I mean, you've heard people say that God is my rock, my salvation, my comforter, my da 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 da, whatever. The visual picture of God as a rock, or like I said, the rock of salvation, uh, or comforter, it you can find that a lot in the Bible. So this might sound like a stupid question. How is a rock mighty? It can withstand a lot. Little pebbles, maybe not so much, but a rock, storms, uh, freezing cold temperatures, hot, cold, like super hot temperatures. Uh, a tree can grow out of a rock somehow. Like, it can withstand a lot of things, right?
Right.
Do you have any other ways that a rock is mighty?
It's also very sturdy as well, and sometimes it's hard to move because we have the parable where Jesus is sitting here saying, to make sure your faith has a firm foundation, build your house upon the rock. Don't be as a stupid man building his house in the sand where it could be destroyed and fly away or break away. Yes, it will take a lot of time to build it because you're doing all of it in stone, but eventually it'll be worth it. And that foundation will be firm and strong and won't be breakable.
You know what you just made me think about?
What?
It's gonna sound crazy, but you know the story of the three little pigs?
Yeah,
I wonder if they took the example from that verse to make the story of the three little pigs.
it's a good possibility.
Because, I mean, you think about it, the one made his house out of straw.
The other one built his house out of sticks, and the other one built his house out of bricks.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. That's
well
interesting.
done there. Well done there, Velma.
That's interesting. Um. Anyways, in Old Testament times, the people would often, hide in like caves or like in the mountains to hide from like their enemies. And you can see that in 1 Samuel 13:6. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn to that because these verses were also very similar. If I can find it, 1 Samuel. When the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, then the people did hide themselves in caves and thickets and rocks and high places and pits. So that is just proving that people back in the old days did used to hide in mountains or caves or whatever. So when God says that he is our rock, it's not almost like it is. It is a promise that he is a safe place. We can go to him and hide in him to get rest. So there's four verses, and that's where they're all kind of the same. So Deuteronomy 32:15. Oh, I almost turned right to it. Oh, paper cut. I got a paper cut from the Bible. That's ironic. Um, so I'm not gonna try to pronounce this unless you want to try it, Brandon.
Okay, what is it?
Deuteronomy 32:15.
32:15.
It's just the first part.
Okay. But he that should have been upright when he waxed fat. Okay, I'm gonna go over the other part. I can't even understand that one at all.
KJV.
No, Geneva.
Oh, well, the KJV starts off with some weird name that I can't pronounce.
Deuteronomy 23:15.
32:15.
Oh, 32:15. Okay, 32:15. Okay, 32:15. Right,
Yep.
Deuteronomy.
Yep.
That's where this is different. Okay, Jacob ate his fill. Jeshurun, if I'm saying that correctly, grew fat and kicked you and kicked. You grew fat, bloated, and gorged. Whoa. He abandoned God who made him and scoffed at the rock of his salvation.
Yeah.
Huh.
So then the next one is 2 Samuel 22:47.
Second Samuel 22:47, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Lord lives. Blessed be my rock, and exalted be my God, the rock of my salvation.
So that's a second verse that's pretty uh, close to what we just read. Next is Psalm 89:26.
Psalm 89:26. Psalm 89:26. Where is it? Psalm 81. Okay, Psalms what?
89:26.
Oh, 89:26. That's why I couldn't find. Okay.
Yeah, I heard you say 81, and I was like, no.
89:26. 26. Okay. He shall cry to me, you are my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation.
Mm, there's one more.
Another one.
Psalm 95:1.
95:1. Oh, come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation.
So it is evident that when, you know, that the phrase rock of my salvation is all over the Bible. Because that was just four verses, and they all said the same thing. So The picture gets more beautiful as the prophets of the Old Testament begin to refer to their coming Messiah as a stone. Habakkuk would have heard Isaiah's prophecy, but to Israel and Judah he will be a stone, a rock. He warned that he would be a stone that was rejected by the builders, but would become a cornerstone or anchor for the building, anyways. And the idea of Jesus being a rock and a stone carries on throughout the New Testament. And the other verse that I looked up was Isaiah 28:16, where I had a hard time finding Isaiah the first time too, um, where it literally does say that the stone would be rejected by the builders, but we would become a cornerstone or anchor for the building, anyways. I can't remember where it was. Actually, I think it was closer to Habakkuk.
I was gonna say hello to whoever was watching. Someone was watching just a bit ago.
Hold, please, while I try to find Isaiah.
Okay.
You know what? I'm just gonna do it the easy way. I'm so glad I'm not a pastor. I would be like, hold, please, every 2 seconds.
I would do the same thing too because, like, I'm still learning. You know that.
983. Oh, yep, Isaiah. Okay. 28:16. And I can't memorize anything, so I would always have to be going back. Anyways, therefore, thus saith the Lord God: Behold, I lay in Zion for a foundation a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. He that believeth shall not make haste. So that's that, warning that God would, or Jesus would be a stone that would be rejected, but we would become a cornerstone and an anchor for the building, meaning us. Anyways, so the next question is, what is Habakkuk possibly thinking when he uses the terminology to petition God on behalf of Judah, meaning 12:17? So why is, after God said what he said to him, why would Habakkuk still be kind of questioning? I was just kind of like, he's still begging God to do something, but in a nicer way. He now knows that God's still there and God still hears, but like still kind of questioning. Like, I want to kind of use the example of like my parents. So my dad had pancreatic cancer. He's a pancreatic cancer survivor. I'm pretty sure that my mom and dad, when they found out that he had pancreatic cancer, which is a top killer, they were probably doing some questioning and some wrestling. They were probably like, why is this happening? We have four or three small children. Like, why would you possibly kill off one of us? And like, if it was me and my husband, I'd probably be like, why is this happening? Like, especially if we had children in the picture, I'd be like, why is this happening? We have however many small children, and you're just gonna kill off my best friend and my partner. What am I gonna do? There would be so many questions. I can imagine my parents having so many questions because, let's see, I think it was 2006 or 7 when they found out. So I was probably 8, and Ethan was 6, and Asa was probably 2 or 3. So imagine being in that situation. I feel it like anybody would be questioning God and asking and violently lamenting, like, why? And then, so my dad made it through that cancer, and then only to find out a few years later he had cancer again. So being through the first round of cancer, and questioning and just leaning on God, and but still questioning, and then the second round of cancer comes up, and I feel like they were probably, questioning again, but also in a nicer way. So, my answer to the question, what is Habakkuk possibly thinking when he uses the different terminology? to petition God on behalf of his homeland, he's still probably begging God to do something, but knowing that he's still there, if that makes sense.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around that.
The
I mean, I've
question?
never. Hmm.
What part are you trying to wrap your head around?
I'll start with Habakkuk because, hmm, you know what? I can relate to him a little bit more now. Here's why: because I still did all the time. Like I'm saying, look, I know you're right here. I know you're trying to help me and stuff like that. But why am I not seeing results like I should? I'm doing stuff for you, but I don't understand why I'm sitting here waiting. Like it makes no sense. But the other stuff still makes me think a lot. The whole entire book in general.
Right. Uh, I think this is the last part. Yeah. The fifth attribute and the truth of
You can keep
God.
going.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm by the door because there might be a raccoon or something. I'm not sure yet.
Oh, so the fifth truth about God is that God is faithful, and you can also find that in verse 12. Let's see. So I'll read the verses since you're standing by the door. There's only two, but um, there's going to be a question. Well, the same questions right after both of the verses. So the first verse is Romans 3, chapter 3, which I had to do the same thing that I had to do the last time and look it up in the NIV because the KJV was not making sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, chapter 3, verse 3 of Romans says, "For what if some did not believe? Shall their unbelief make the faith of God without effect?" And the question after is, why is God's faithfulness such good news for Judah and for us? So, why is his faithfulness, based off of that verse, a good thing for us? And chapter 3, verse 3 in the KJV kind of is mainly just talking about the unsaved and the unfaithful. So I kind of maybe pieced together that he's waiting for the unfaithful, and that's why that's good for us. Unless you had any other thing, like anything else to add to that, or a different
I
aspect.
I could probably add some to it. Um, that would make more sense of why the other stuff has not happened yet because all the prophecies haven't been fulfilled yet. There's some that have been, but not fully yet. And he's waiting for the unfaithful to come back to him. I mean, for you, example, you're a prime example. You came back and you're doing just fine. And he's trying to see how many more will come back because his wish is for all to come to repentance. He doesn't want no one to perish. He knows a lot of them won't, but he wishes they would because he
Yeah,
doesn't want them to suffer. He wants them to come home because hell was not meant for us. It never was.
yeah. Trying to find the other one. Oh, almost. The second verse is Second Timothy 2:13. Oh, well, I read the wrong verse, but I also I also found Second Timothy verse 13. Where is my pen? I don't know. Well, Second Timothy verse 13 says, "If we believe not, yet he abideth in faithful; he cannot deny himself." But also the verse I read, Second Timothy chapter 2 verse 3, "Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ," which both of them have something to say. So verse 3, it's just kind of like we go through things and still believe because we have that faith. Oh, found my pen. And then verse 13, "If we believe not, yet he abideth faithful, he cannot deny himself." Like, I don't know if, yeah, so that's talking also about the unfaithful. um if we don't believe, he still stays faithful to us. And you know, we can't really deny that. Like, there might be something hard that we're going through that we might lose a little bit of our faith, but in the end, we come out and we're like, oh yeah, that was God. There's a reason why I believe in him, kind of. Those two truths from the New Testament have been stood on a time or two by sinful, other sinful people. And, we can pray and say, thank you that nothing I do can, what's the word I'm looking for? Take away your faithfulness. Thank you that your faithfulness is not just something you do, but it's also who you are. So, again, going back to why did Habakkuk mention God's faithfulness? I'm just kind of like, to remind himself and us that God always has a plan and always works things out. He works out justice somehow. Anything to add?
Not this time. I sat back down also. I guess we have a family of black cats living on the roof.
Hmm, nice. And then the last thing that I wanted to read was, in the face of difficult times, the questions of our hearts require us to look back at God's faithfulness and rest in it until we once again see it rising to our need. We can either fixate on our current trial and become anxious, or meditate on past provisions and experience peace. Perhaps this is one reason that we face challenges, so we will pause to remember what God has already done for us. Um, Consider God's faithfulness. A good way to do this is to write a list, remembering how He's shown up for you in the past. And she said that she did this when the day she realized a high risk nature of my son and daughter in law's first pregnancy. She said she wrote for pages and pages, and she gave a little snippet of her personal journal. February 27th, or February 27th. Two little girls. Yesterday, Robbie and Aaliyah told us they're having twins. But Jesus, we need you to vigilantly watch over them. You healed my baby brother. You saved my father's life in Russia. You gave my mother a goodbye from cancer. You restored my broken heart. You found us a daughter who needed a home, and we rescued Autumn. You rescued our marriage. You even healed Cindy Lou who was her fainting goat, apparently, and just said, do it again. So that was a little example of, you know, if we wanted to write a list to remember how God has shown up for us in the past. Uh, how has God shown up for me in the past? As I've said before, I should not be here, but I am. And a lot of my friends and family know that I've had a very rough past because of the things that I chose for myself. But I decided, my teenager brain decided, this is a good idea. And I spent 3 years, maybe longer, on a very, very long and rough path. But I should not be here, but I am. So those are just a few ways that God has shown up for me in the past. And in the past also, I have an amazing husband who doesn't think he's that great, but he is. He is wonderful, amazing, my best friend. And now we have 3 fur children. And we're still struggling, but we're still moving on. So that is all I have for today. Brandon, do you have anything you want to add?
Not right now. That's about. It still leaves me thinking a little bit of what's what, because I never did really anything with Habakkuk before.
Yeah.
So it makes me want to go through and see what's going on with that.
Well, my entire first chapter of Habakkuk is all kinds of marked up and written on and stuff circled and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I take it that's all.
that's all, folks. It was a lot to think about.
All right. For people who want to do the study yourself, you can. Sorry, I'm coughing a whole. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm not coming down with anything, but watch the
Yeah.
whole entire study we're doing. This is part 5. Watch the other 4 parts to give you a better idea of what's what, and start thinking. Start doing your research as well. Don't just take our words for it. It's best you do it for yourself, so you have the understanding um, from the Bible itself.
And if you don't want to listen to us talking and stuff like that, you can also get the book yourself. Uh, it's the 6 week Bible study on Habakkuk, Remembering God's Faithfulness When He Seems Silent by Dana Gresh. And you should be able to get that on Amazon or whatever.
So, with that being the case, of those who have missed a live, it will be posted both on the live section and on the video section. But yeah, that's about it. So, with that, God bless you all, and we hope to see you in the next video.